A very warm welcome back to GlobeTrotting. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Virgin Atlantic can often be given the label disruptor. However, this label is only emphasized through its launch and intention to really disrupt what was seen on transatlantic routes during the 1980s and prior, where an element of dominance occurred. Founded by Richard Branson in 1984, Virgin Atlantic encompassed visions from multiple high-profile people. The airline wanted to be not only customer-centric, but offer a unique branding that was familiar to a certain extent, even away from the airline, and an approach that would see them innovate. London Gatwick to Newark, operated by a 747 in June of the same year as its founding, was their first passenger service. From there, while their focus has remained on the busy transatlantic sector, their network has adapted and changed, with new destinations featuring. While North America is hugely important, Virgin Atlantic aircraft can now be seen in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and even the Caribbean as popular holiday destinations for Brits that are seeking a bit of sun in the colder months especially. Virgin Atlantic's main base is in London, however it has focused on other locations throughout its history, such as Manchester too. But a primary hub can be found in London Heathrow, which is deemed by the airline as the best airport for their customer base, from not only the accessibility that it provides, but also the ability to connect onwards and everything else that comes with it. Over the years, Virgin Atlantic has grown its fleet significantly. As a result, there's been a lot of change. However, that change has taken place in recent years, with major fleet types departing in favour of new, fuel-efficient planes that are deemed to bring the carrier forward, not only to be more environmentally friendly, but also efficient. Before I move on to Virgin Atlantic's current fleet, first, let's explore its former fleet. The airline has always battled with competition, and is not the largest airline by fleet size by any means, but its aircraft have always served a purpose, and completed operations with a strong intent. While the airline has flown many different series through the years, I wanted to focus on some of the more recent departures, beginning with the A330-200. This was a recent casualty, and certainly part of the current transformation process that occurred and stemmed on from the pandemic. In fact, like many airlines, the pandemic ultimately changed the course of direction for Virgin Atlantic, and accelerated the move to more efficient planes. But you could say it was more noticeable for an airline with already a smaller fleet. Therefore, a more heightened focus could be put on each aircraft type, and these A330-200s were minimal regarding their total unit count, but still a casualty. Whereas, potentially at over Lufthansa Group Airlines or at Delta, while their fleet change plans are huge, because they already operate hundreds upon hundreds of aircraft, the changes can be seen, but may not be picked up on as much as a change at, say, Virgin Atlantic. Wide-bodies and quad-engine planes, believe it or not, were also a staple in the Virgin Atlantic fleet before 2020. That now seems like a forgotten time. The airline flew the A340-600 for 18 years across its fleet. However, the last flight occurred in March of 2020 when the plane was forced into an early retirement as part of Virgin Atlantic's efforts to cost cut wherever possible during a challenging period for the company and the broader aviation industry. One up from the A340-600 was the Queen of the Skies, the 747. They flew the 747s for multiple decades across multiple variants, with the 747-200B actually being their first aircraft. The Dash 400, though, would remain in their fleet for 26 years and act as a staple. It was therefore the last variant of the 747 series that they flew. And like the A340, it operated its last commercial flight in March of 2020 as well, before also being forced into an early retirement. It was easier for the airline to remove aircraft such as these and transition to new fleet types than continue flying the older ones, hoping that, say, the operating climate would improve, when at that point it certainly didn't look like occurring anytime soon. In 2023, Virgin Atlantic's fleet will be much more streamlined because of these changes multiple years back. For the airline, it is for the greater good, while some aviation enthusiasts, including myself, will always reminisce about what was. For the airline, they see far greater benefits because of this. Let's get their only older aircraft, if you will, out of the way, and that's the A330-300, with a total of 10 remaining, and these average an age of 11.5 years. This is the only aircraft type that isn't truly part of aircraft manufacturers' next generation that remains. Virgin Atlantic are lucky, because what is their newest aircraft that only started deliveries half a year ago is the A330-900, part of the all-important A330neo series, and acting as a replacement for the existing A330ceo. Next on the list is the Boeing 787-9. Believe it or not, the 787s have an average age of 7 years, with the oldest unit at almost 9. So they've been around for a more extended period, but were really the first part of the new era at Virgin Atlantic that arrived, focusing on that fleet renewal. And these Dreamliners are still a driving force in their long-haul fleet plans. The airline has 17 of these now in service. For high-capacity routes, it's the twin-engined A350-1000 that has arrived only in the past 3 years to relieve some of the pressures that may have been present following the retirement of the A340s and 747s. After all, these quad-engine planes did have quite a significant amount of capacity that came with them. So as demand returned and these aircraft didn't, you could argue that there was a gap left for Virgin Atlantic that needed to be filled. The A350-1000s have an average age of 3 years, and thus far the airline has seen 10 be delivered, and those 10 are still in service. More aircraft are set to join the Virgin Atlantic network with time, which is all part of their continued rebuild of fleet. As a result, the way Virgin Atlantic's fleet will look in 5 years will be vastly different from their fleet 10 years prior. However, as the company will say, these new aircraft are significantly better than what they previously flew. That's not to say your A340s and 747s weren't suitable, but the aviation industry now, in 2023, is very different to what it once was even 10 years ago, let alone 25 and 30 years back. And realistically, changes in the aircraft airlines operate are necessary to keep up with the competition that they're seeing, continue to reel in profits, and also provide an adequate product for their customer base. At Virgin Atlantic, these next-generation aircraft are all part of the goals that the company has to remain as a disruptor. What are your thoughts on the fleet at Virgin Atlantic? From the planes that they retired in 2020 to the aircraft they currently fly now, with one of the most modern fleets in Europe. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and do be safe. I appreciate the support here on GlobeTrotting. Stay tuned for more analysis coming in the next few days.
And we'll fly.